Here we have our electrosurgery handpieces and consumable componentry. Left to right at the bottom we have our reusable monopolar handpiece, so that is able to be sterilized with a steam autoclave. Second along we have another monopolar handpiece. This one here is disposable, so not to be reused. Both our monopolar handpieces they come standard with a spatula tip and have the ability to be swapped out with any of the tips at the top of this image here that you can see. So there's several options to suit your cautery needs. Next along down the bottom here we have our bayonet bipolar forceps. We also next to those have the Adson bipolar forceps, so just two different types of the bipolar forceps you can get, and also the cord for our bipolar forceps, all of which of the bipolar pieces are able to be sterilized in your autoclave unit as well. Note the different connections. For your bipolar has two individual pieces to go into your unit, and the monopolar has a pretty universal attachment to go into the monopolar slot on the unit. Again at the top here we just have those monopolar interchangeable tips, and then also we have our electrosurgery scratch pad. So this is great, it comes sterile, and in theatre it's good for obviously cleaning your tips. It has a little adhesive bottom that you can remove to stick to the most convenient place for you, so you can easily use it during your procedure. Also important to note with our bipolar cords and our bipolar handpieces is that there are two different attachment types from the handpiece to the cord. So the first being the EU type and the second being the US type of attachment. So just making sure if you're reordering any componentry that you're ensuring you have the correct slot type so that your handpiece fits to your cable appropriately. Starting off on the front panel of our unit, we have our power button for turning on and off your device. We also have our function buttons and the screens where the current settings are displayed. So that is for our bipolar, our cut, our blend, and our coagulation functions. We have the control dial and button on the right, and for our insert points along the bottom for our handpieces, grounding plate, and foot pedal. From left to right we have our bipolar 2-prong insert point, a monopolar single prong insert point, a monopolar 3-prong insert point, which is a pretty universal, more common fitting for your monopolar. We also have the insert point for the grounding plate, and the final insert point on the bottom right is for our foot pedal. Powering on our device, it is first going to run through a quick self-check on startup. And if it's your first time using your unit, it will have standard factory settings, but once you change these settings for your preference, it will then be saved each time you turn on and off your unit to the previous settings. As we power up the unit as well, it is going to alarm us because we do not have our grounding plate plugged in. We recommend having this as part of your theatre protocol so it's never forgotten, and that it's always appropriately placed under your patient before any kind of cautery is allowed to be used. Turning on our unit. That is our alarm, so if we plug in our grounding plate, we can see the previously lit up red light is now green, and that alarm has stopped sounding. The grounding plate currently plugged into our unit is our standard reusable grounding plate, and once this is inserted into that connection point, the unit will register that the grounding plate is in and allow you to fire the unit whether or not you have this plate underneath your animal. So that is again why we recommend it's super important to have part of your theatre protocol set up so that it's never forgotten. Also important, if you notice throughout theatre your electrosurgical unit isn't firing as well or you aren't getting as good a connection, to always check that plate first and make sure that it still has good contact with your patient. We have an alternative grounding plate which is disposable but can help if you're building confidence using the unit or your team are new to the unit and want to ensure that they always have that good connection of your grounding plate. This grounding plate does require a good connection with bare skin, so either would require an extra clip patch on your patient, or utilizing areas like an inguinal area if it's out of your surgical site would be beneficial too, so that you get good contact and no fur is going to hinder the contact with your plate. For this plate as a demonstration, if we remove our reusable grounding plate and plug in our disposable one, watching this light here. So instead of just going green and allowing us to use our cautery now, it's stayed red. So connected but still red. If I was to try and fire my monopolar handpiece now, the unit would stop me from doing this until I have good contact with my patient. For this plate, it comes with a plastic backing. So we just remove that plastic backing. We don't need gel for this plate. Once we remove the plastic backing and attach it to our patient, we should see our light turning green to indicate that good contact has been made. We would now be able to use our cautery function. If at any point during your procedure that contact is lost, we can see here as contact is lost with the patient, that turns red again, that light, and alarms as well to let us know that contact has been lost. And we would also, the unit would now stop us from using that monopolar again until that contact is gained back. Our grounding plates are essential for use with our monopolar electrosurgery, as the electrical current travels from the tip of the monopolar handpiece through the patient and exits at the point of the grounding plate. Plugging in our monopolar handpiece, we're just going to take the 3-prong insert and pop it into the device like so. You would now be ready to use your monopolar. For our bipolar setup, we will take these 2 prongs of our bipolar cord and plug them into the 2-prong point at the left of the unit here. We also need to plug in our foot pedal for use with our bipolar forceps, taking this connection here, which has the internal 4 prongs, and it also on the outside of this circle here, it also has a few little notches sticking out, which line up with the notches on this insert point here. So just ensuring that those are going to line up with our notches on the unit. And then once we get that connected, we just twist this part here to secure the foot pedal. The electrosurgical unit functions by using our monopolar buttons on our pen, with the yellow being for cut and blend functions and the blue button being for your coagulation function. We can also use our foot pedal when our bipolar is not in use, for cut and blend as your yellow foot pedal and blue for your coagulation pedal. To operate your bipolar cautery, we will be using the blue foot pedal button on the foot pedal provided and attached to the front of our unit. We can move through our different functions and also change our settings for the different functions in terms of the intensity of the electrical current by using the related buttons next to each of the words highlighted in terms of which function you're going to be using. So currently we have the illuminated light next to the cut button. Moving through to blend, we would hit this one here. We can see that illuminate now. Coagulation would be the bottom on the bottom right. And then for bipolar would be over here on the left. To adjust the settings of our different functions, we want to turn the dial here, and when we're ready to change the function, we need to press in on the dial while it's flashing. If we don't push in on the dial whilst the number is still flashing, it will revert back to the previous setting. We can get into our cut mode. In cut, we are going to be able to use our yellow button for cutting, and at the same time we will be able to use our blue button for coagulation. So cutting here and using our blue button for coagulation. If we move to the blend, we will be able to use our yellow button for blending and the blue for coagulation still. If we move through to bipolar, we won't be able to use our monopolar functions, and we will be using our foot pedal to use the bipolar function. We recommend starting on a lower setting for when you're first using your unit. Usually around that 15 mark seems to be quite good, but you can go lower than this if you're concerned at all. And provided you have good contact, this should be adequate. You can then move up from that if you're finding that you need a little bit more electrical current to come through and help with your cautery. For each of the functions, we have our cutting, which will focus the heat distribution at the surgical site. Should be used with the tip slightly away from the tissue. This cutting function has a continuous high frequency electrical current with a greater intensity. The coagulation function, this uses a desiccation to coagulate and is used with close continuous contact with the tissue. This has an intermittent lower frequency electrical pulse and is less intensity. The blend is a cutting waveform which utilizes hemostasis while cutting and is a mix of the cutting and coagulation. And our bipolar is also similar to coagulation, and instead of using our grounding plate as the exit point, we're going to be having the electrical current traveling from tip to tip of the bipolar forcep, which is another reason that we don't need that grounding plate, but still recommend it as part of your theatre setup, in case you choose to switch over to monopolar at any point during your procedure. To the back of our electrosurgical unit, we have a air vent on the left hand side there, so this must be kept clear of any obstruction, so making sure this isn't pressed up against a wall or up against anything else that may obstruct this flow. In the center there we have our speaker, which will emit your alarm sound and also the sound that emits whilst you are activating cautery. You can adjust the volume of the cautery sound in terms of when you're holding down your buttons and using the cautery itself. You can reduce and increase that volume, but you cannot alter the alarm volume. That will always be at the same pitch to alert you to any disconnection with your grounding plate or other issues with your machine. We then just have your main power switch at the back and your power cord insert point. When using your electrosurgical unit, we recommend using this alongside our Benedikt smoke evacuation system for the safest working theatre environment for your team. There are two options to use this unit with your monopolar handpieces, one of which comes as the monopolar combined with the tubing already in a sterile packet. The other is a separate tubing which connects to any of our standard monopolar disposable or reusable handpieces. The unit can be used on manual function with the foot pedal if preferred. However, we recommend that it is used with the automatic system so that the unit starts up its suction feature as soon as you're firing your cautery unit. So using this loop here, we take the end of our monopolar cord and we're just going to loop this through twice so that we create a good electrical connection. And so when we fire our monopolar handpiece, this unit will fire off at the same time. So once we have that looped through, we then plug the monopolar into our electrosurgical unit. And then once we fire off our monopolar handpiece, our unit automatically kicks in. We can change the time that it will suction once we release the button on our monopolar handpiece. So at the moment it's 5 seconds. If we turn this down to say 1 second, and we hold down our monopolar handpiece. It's going to be a lot shorter once I let go of the monopolar button. With our monopolar cord looped through and our settings all sorted, we can now take, in this instance, we just have the individual sleeve which comes sterile, and we'll take our monopolar handpiece, insert this into the tubing like so, and then just take the end of that tubing and plug that into your smoke evac filter, and then we're all ready for use.